Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for this EV Fleet World and EO Charging webinar on charge assurance. We're excited to dive into strategies that can help electrify and optimize your fleet. Joining us from E&O Charging are Richard Staveley, Chief Executive Officer, and Richard Earle, Director of R&D. Starting with our team from EO Charging is Richard Staveley. Would you like to introduce yourself, please, Richard?
First of all, John, thank you very much for hosting this webinar. We're very pleased to be here today, so I'll keep it real brief, as you're going to hear more from me a bit later. But my name's Richard Staveley. I'm CEO of EO Charging, where I joined earlier this year. I'm also chairman of Zest, which is a UK charge point operator and mobility service provider. And that gives me 1 foot in the public charging camp and 1 foot in the enterprise or the fleet camp. And I think that is a really helpful perspective. My goal for EO is to make us the go-to electrification partner for commercial fleets. And I'm really pleased to say we're making tremendous progress on that front and growing very quickly. And what I would like to do today is to talk to you about the sort of transformation journey that we're going on with many of our customers that's driving that electrification journey. But now let me hand over to Richard Earle, who's also on the EO team.
Good afternoon, everyone, and good morning. So it's a pleasure to be here today. I'm Richard. I'm the R&D director at EO Charging, and so I've got responsibility for the introduction of new tech into the company, whether that's new products, standards, or customers. And also I have the privilege of representing EO within the wider industry.
Thanks, Richard. And we're also pleased to have Ashish Pandey, Principal Consultant from Zintio, who will share insights from his experience with charge assurance. Ashish, would you like to come in and introduce yourself?
Thanks, John, and hello, everyone. It's great to join everyone on this webinar today. I'm Ashish Pandey. I'm one of the principal consultants at Zintio. Zintio is a specialist sustainability consulting firm with presence in the UK, Europe, and India. Most of my advisory work in the last 7 or 8 years has been in the domain of strategy and deals in the energy transition and rapidly evolving e-mobility sector. Through my consulting career, I have had the opportunity to work with organizations and on topics across the e-mobility value chain, ranging from working with auto OEMs in Europe to charge solution providers in the UK. Some of the digital solution providers, not just in the US and UK, but also in Southeast Asian countries, and also certain global fleet owners and operators, including large pharmaceutical players and airport companies as well. So thank you, and I'm really delighted to be here again.
And last but certainly not least, we are joined today by EO's charging client, contract manager for EV charge points across the 3,000 co-op food and funeral care sites, Rob Claiborne.
Yes, good afternoon, John, and good afternoon, everybody. And thank you, first of all, to EO and Fleet World for putting this together. I'm really excited and honoured to be coming along to talk to everybody today. So yeah, my name's Rob Claiborne. I'm the contract manager. I look after the relationship between EO and ourselves at the co-op for our food and funeral care sites, and also within our distribution network. I look after planned and reactive maintenance across, as John says, our 3,000 sites. So yeah, really excited to be here today to talk to you, and hopefully I can share some of the experience I've had within the client base, but also kind of sharing some of the things that I've been working with EO on.
So let's start by looking at the path to zero emission road transport. Ashish, perhaps you can get us going on this.
So let's actually start with a quick snapshot of where we are in the UK as of now. So road transport and rail, as you'll probably see on the pie chart there, are responsible for almost a quarter of all the UK emissions, and that's the latest data as per 2022 figures. What's actually more concerning is the sector has struggled to cut emissions over the last 2 to 3 decades compared to certain other sectors. For example, the power generation sector. So if we go back to 1990s, power generation was full of coal, full of gas, a lot of emissions from the sector. But actually, power generation as a sector as a whole has done quite a lot. We in the UK saw shutdown of the last coal plant only a couple of months ago. Renewables make up anywhere from 50 to 75% of our daily consumption demands. And clearly, transportation as a sector as a whole, and road transport in particular, needs to do a lot more and quite quickly as well. So if we are to meet our net zero targets, both of these things have to happen. And but I think there's hope. And the hope actually comes from the electrification of transport through electric vehicles, and especially battery electric vehicles, or BEVs, as we call them. They are growing really fast on the UK roads. They're following what is actually called the S-curve. So the adoption starts slowly, and that's what we're experiencing probably today. And that's why this you can see a lot of frustration and in the industry as a general, but actually it speeds up. So that's the good part of the S-curve. It starts slowly, but it speeds up quite rapidly. And if we actually manage to keep this momentum, we'll see big reduction in emissions, and not just for cars, but for different vehicle classes such as buses, trucks, vans, even specialist vehicles such as the refuse collection vehicles, the bin vehicles. And this is actually, for me personally, this is a transition of a lifetime happening for almost for the first time in a century of over road vehicles on the road. So there's understandably quite a number of challenges that we have to overcome. So the biggest one that is being discussed quite a lot is around high upfront cost. EVs generally cost more than their comparable diesel and petrol counterparts. Supply chains are stretched, be it the batteries, be it the charging infrastructure, be it the grid infrastructure as well. Quite a lot of fear and doubt in the customers, which we call FUD. And that's both in private customers and in the business customers as well. On top of that, you'll probably see that we need better infrastructure and clearer policies. But I think it's not all it's not all going bad in the wrong direction. But there are opportunities that are quite exciting as well. I think with the right policies, the investments and innovation, we can accelerate the EV adoption and also reshape the way we think about transportation in general. And the UK, I believe, has ambitious goals, ambitious targets, and these goals will take actually teamwork from all of us, the industry and the different stakeholders. And those are some of my opening thoughts on how do we reduce emissions from road transportation in general.
Don't go, Ashish. Drawing on your extensive experience and deep understanding of it, what do you see as the true impacts of road transport? And what do you believe are the biggest challenges to EV adoption within commercial fleets?
The true impact definitely is reduction of emissions from the sector, clean air, positive impact on the society, positive impact on people's health is what I would say are the true and quantifiable impacts on on electrification of road transport. And I think to answer your second question, I think it's pretty much all there on the slide, but just to add a bit more color and flavor to it, I think the big challenge still comes from the high upfront cost. And people, when they talk about high upfront cost, they probably just think about the vehicles, but actually it's not just the vehicles, it's also the associated charging infrastructure. The 150 kilowatt or 250 kilowatt DC rapid charger can cost probably as much as an entry-level electric vehicle. And you'll probably also realize that when it comes to electrifying depots and hubs, a lot of investment is required to upgrade the grid infrastructure. And the timelines that are being quoted for that is actually 5 to 7 years in the future. So even when we see businesses having appetite to electrify their fleets, there are challenges around getting grid connections for that. One of the big challenges, which actually is not discussed as often in the public discourse, but as a consultant and as an advisor to certain corporate organizations, is something that I hear constantly, almost always from CEOs and the C-suite execs, is that change management around this process is quite tricky. These are some of the most complex multi-million, multi-year transaction programs, and they require seamless coordination, bringing everyone on the same page, lots of procurement activity. So that's, I think, where we see a lot of value that we deliver to our clients and our customers is often hand-holding them through the whole change management process.
Thanks, Ashish. So back to Richards. Based on your decade of experience supporting fleet electrification, what do you see as the most significant challenges and barriers to adoption?
Well, I think Ashish raised some very good points there. So first of all, thanks very much, Ashish. And just looking at the S-curve on the slides that you presented, the total emissions as presented, it just shows how really important it is that we do electrify transport as such a major contributor towards global emissions. But okay, so I'll answer your question, John. I'll let Richard Earl talk through some of the more regulatory and technical aspects, but I'll try and raise, I guess, a few of the broader challenges and opportunities as we see it, because with those challenges, there is an opportunity for specialist companies like EA, like Zinteo, to help our partners and clients on their journey towards electrification. So Ashish sort of covered a lot of ground there, but some of the points that kind of are noted are, one, in particular, cost; two, doing more with less; and three, business transformation. And I would kind of lump change management into that. But business transformation is a really significant one to call out. Why? Because switching from an ICE, or internal combustion engine, i.e. sticking diesel or petrol into an engine, fleet, to a BEV, or battery electric vehicle fleet, it really does require transformational change. And of course, that brings challenges. For us, ensuring business continuity, is probably one of the top challenges that we see these businesses face. And that's why critical business fleets deserve specialist partners that can help them on that electrification journey, which, I agree, is a journey of transformation. It's not about modular point solutions, and there are quite a few players in the market that can offer these module solutions. It's really about a complete offer. So although I would say there are challenges, and for us, we have learned getting involved as early as possible in that transformation journey is really helpful. But as I say, as I would say, there are challenges. There's also huge positive intent to decarbonize commercial transport, as I said, because we have to do it. It's the right thing to do. But just exploring some of the information that's available in terms of where fleets are in that journey. About a year ago, November 23, I think it was, Accenture published a report saying, of the business leaders that they surveyed and spoke to, approximately half, 54%, expect to have made significant progress towards electrifying their fleets by 2030, sort of in line with many of the sort of target dates. But frankly, few, comparatively speaking, when you look at the size of these fleets, have really made any material progress today. And bear in mind, companies like EO deal with the sort of the pathfinders, the pioneers. So we're busy, but it doesn't necessarily reflect what the whole industry is doing. So why is the industry not further ahead? So Ashish mentioned a number of points. Access to power, the cost. Some of these upfront barriers are important. In fact, they're the top barriers in the report, closely followed by business transformation as being a key concern in terms of the complexity of getting this done. So what helps and what will change behavior and what will get people moving forward? Well, legislation is hugely important, right? Because that's event driven, and that has to happen. You want people to stop smoking. You ask them nicely, you tell them it's good for them, it's better for everyone. The reality is, unless you legislate, you won't change behavior. So there's something of that in any major shift. Now, alongside legislation are funding and education, and they're incredibly important in addressing these challenges. Some segments have been the positive recipients of funding. For example, the Zebra funding, which has been so important to the transport operators in the electrification of their fleets. Now, it doesn't touch all the transport operators, but we are seeing in London, the way being led by TfL, that there are, there's a massive program of the electrification of the London buses, and we're a big part of that. But while regulation and funding can be an accelerant, it's also important and fair, I think, to recognise that there's been significant progress also in sectors where there hasn't been any funding. So, as you will hear from Rob later, consumer businesses like Co-op are leading the charge. And while there are barriers, there are challenges, those businesses are forging ahead. They're learning. They are getting an advantage, and they also have real considerable pull from their customers for whom green credentials matter. So the likes of businesses such as Co-op, Amazon, DHL, UPS, they're all going electric because ultimately it's necessary to do so. So how do we help them at EO? We're going to go into how we help them on that transformation journey throughout this webinar, and to hear what their feedback is and what's important to them. We would classify ourselves as a specialist. We have strategies to address the challenges all of these fleets have, whether they're an e-bus fleet, so called transit bus in the USA, whether they're last mile, so person in a van delivering something, or whether they're middle mile, which is electric trucks, which is I think yet to come in force. And we have a solution that will help them on every step of their journey, because in different segments, in different geographies, are at a different point in their journey. And we'll bring that to life a little bit later on as we explain why we have developed our platform approach by way of a solution, not a point solution, a complete solution, to help guide our partners through their journey of transformation towards electrification. But let me hand over to Richard, who I think is going to talk through some of the technical aspects and the regulatory aspects.
Yeah, thank you. So the technical regulations facing our industry are wide-ranging and complex, but fundamentally there are three broad categories of regulation. You've got product regs, you've got the grid regulations, and you've got country-specific regulations. So generally, the product standards are beginning to converge on an international core. There's the standard IEC 61851 and 15118, which defines how the charging station operates and how it communicates to the EV. Then you've got OCPP for the charging station to cloud communications. And then you've got OCPI for sort of cloud-to-cloud roaming services. And so they're pretty well defined and pretty clear. But where the challenges come from is really when those standards are loose and they haven't been defined clearly, or when they evolve. For example, OCPP 1.6 is now beginning to evolve to OCP 2.0. So what are the drivers for our customers from moving from 1.6 to 2.0? Why should they do it? And what's the impact going to be? With regards to the grid, the major challenges are really just gaining large-scale grid connections. The process exists, but it's really slow and it's expensive. And so therefore, the challenge facing us is how do we get that done quickly? How can we make it fast? How can we make it cheaper? And really, what can we do to engage with the energy industry to make our concerns raised that we've got businesses wanting to transition, but they're the ones holding it up. And finally, you've got country standards. So it's really important to know market specifics really well. So for example, in the UK, there's a requirement under certain scenarios for built-in pen fault detection. Or perhaps you want to do some public charging in Germany, in which case you need the ICREC compliant chargers. So having unique country knowledge is really important. And also, all the countries have different wiring regulations. And so again, you have to be really on the ball to understand the differences and how to make sure your infrastructure is designed safely and cleanly.
And are there different barriers across sectors?
From a technical perspective, fundamentally, you're still getting electricity into vehicles. So the fundamentals are the same. But really, the difference in the sectors is the amount of power required and then the type and the number of chargers required. 6 to 8 years ago, our first fleet electrification projects were really last mile delivery projects. They required slow overnight AC charging stations. And so these depots, they're relatively easy to build and energize. You can probably use an existing supply. Whereas in the last sort of 5 years, buses have appeared, electric buses, and they require a huge amount of power overnight using high power DC chargers. So therefore, the infrastructure stepped up in terms of cost and complexity. And we're now beginning to see e-trucks appear. And that, again, will move the complexity on even further. because they require larger amounts of power, but also more scenarios of instantaneous. They want that power now, or they want it in shorter periods of time. So again, you're just beginning to, you're building up the levels of complexity around the standards.
Seems like a suitable point to bring Rob in. Now, you've made remarkable progress in your electrification journey, Rob. What were the key factors driving those decisions, and what challenges did Co-op face along the way?
Yeah, thank you, John. A very thought-provoking, and challenging question, but certainly very appropriate following both Richard's points in terms of where we've been, the journey, and kind of certainly some of the infrastructure and technical bits. I think for us, the key factors have been absolutely sustainability. We're a member-owned and led business, and our members tell us that sustainability is important to them, and that's important for us in terms of our own sustainability goals, but absolutely the whole country's sustainability goals, net zero, etc. Having that as a key pillar has been really important. Also doing something different to the competition. So I guess my input into the call today is from that kind of end user bit. So EO have been on our electric journey with us since the start, and have been supporting us from an SME perspective in terms of knowledge, in terms of product, in terms of ongoing maintenance, which I'm really excited to talk about in a little bit further through this webinar. But doing something different to what other people are doing, it's great for the brand, it's great for marketing. It shows that different things can be done, and wanting to be market leading, and also kind of investing in fleet alongside charging infrastructure. So if we've got traditional diesel and petrol powered vehicles that are maybe coming end of life, and it's a particularly specialist vehicle, whether that be limousines that we use in our funeral care business, or refrigerated vans that we use in our food business, if you're going to invest in that capital outlay of fleet, actually bringing the electric into the journey from that makes absolute sense, thinking about the few points I've just discussed. And challenges, grid capacity absolutely is one of them in remote sites. We are to our benefit, but certainly to our detriment in terms of the diversity of the estate. We've got stores at the top of Scotland, we've got stores at the bottom of Cornwall, and everywhere between. Major cities tend to not be too bad for us, but certainly within some of those remote areas, that's difficult. And absolutely, network capabilities there. We want to be able to maintain, we want to be able to monitor these assets, and not having the network capability there again at the top of Scotland or the bottom of Cornwall certainly makes that or has made that a real challenge for us, and what I believe will still continue to be one.
Thanks, Rob. Now, as we've been hearing, electrification is a journey. So let's hear from the two Richards a little about the EO approach, and zoom in on charge assurance and what it means. So how does it enhance fleet operations?
Great. Well, firstly, let me define what charge assurance actually is. So charge assurance combines well-designed infrastructure, resilient hardware, intelligent software with automated and manual support services to create a platform that gives assurances to customers that their vehicles will charge. So it's quite a mouthful. So let me unpack that a bit. So the charge assurance platform starts with building a foundation layer of resilient hardware. So it means choosing proven, reliable hardware that meets recognized standards like CCS or OCPP or 15118. We've got to install it correctly. So you've got to install it as per the best-in-class practices, and then you've got to connect it to a resilient failover internet connection. So by following these guidelines, these standards, you can ensure compatibility with all vehicles and a seamless connection to the cloud software console. And that's really where you can see as a customer the status of your charging stations, your fleet, and you can see whether your vehicles are charging as expected. Now, on top of the hardware and software layers, we've added an automated fault resolution layer to try and remotely resolve faults and issues. And then backing that up is a 24/7 operations team that track issues and dispatch engineers to site to resolve charging issues before they become business critical issues. So when you combine this solid infrastructure with flexible software, automated and 24/7 support services, you can create a backbone of a commercial grade charging platform. And that assures customers that their fleet will be ready to go in the morning. So Richard, do you want to talk about the journeys that customers go on?
Thanks, Richard. I'm not going to talk through this like sort of step by step, although we do internally refer to it as our staircase. But with the platform approach, we've managed to make considerable progress with many customers in their their journey towards fleet electrification. As I mentioned a little bit earlier on, different customers in different segments in different geographies are all at a different stage in that journey. But this platform approach that we have really allows us to work with them irrespective of where they are on their journey. In the last mile segment, for example, we've got customers like Rob at the Co-op, who are pioneers, but we've also been, as I mentioned earlier, deeply involved in transit fast electrification here in the UK with the likes of Go Ahead, for example, and now more recently in North America, where they're not as advanced in terms of where they are on that journey, but let me tell you, they'll get there and then they'll go very fast. What we do believe is that EO it really does lead the world in terms of this approach, and as a specialist, we pride ourselves in our ability to help customers. Right now, within the market, there are several big names, energy companies, that have chosen to step out of this part of the market. Why? Because they have point solutions. They can do something within this platform, but they can't bring it together, or they haven't brought it together, and they haven't continued to innovate towards delivering a solution to their customers. So, for example, you will have heard about EVA Global, perhaps, who provided support. Well, unlike EO, who have two parts service, with a human element, but with an automation element, and two parts software, and bring it together to offer a complete platform. A company like EVA had, just a part of that. It was really the people piece. And LX, who have withdrawn from the US market, where they had 125,000 chargers with their software on it, some of them in the e-depot space. Again, they didn't offer that full solution. There are a couple of energy companies, really big names. I don't think it's public, so I won't talk about who they are specifically, but they are exiting that e-depot space. Why? Because you need to be a specialist to be able to deliver a platform approach. So let me just explain a little bit about that and walk you through this. Irrespective of where you are in your journey, at every stage you will run into new business challenges. They will continue to emerge, and we have found that we are able to address those challenges, whether through a combination of software support and automation, but it's very much based on having, as Richard talked about at the beginning, a supportable, scalable, future-proof infrastructure foundation. But it really is the key to us being able to provide this assurance platform. So let's just very quickly step through it. As soon as a business starts to operate or operationalize its vehicles, so it's bought some vehicles, it needs some chargers, the first thing that comes to the fore is business continuity. EVs must perform as well as their ICE, diesel or petrol equivalent. If you cannot make sure that happens and that those vehicles leave on time with the correct amount of charge, then the entire initiative stalls. So we design, we build, we deliver a full solution. That's not always what every customer asks us to do, but that's something that we offer. And then we ensure that it delivers that parity to the ICE fleet. That is what we mean by charge assurance. Okay, so then once you have operationalized that fleet, the next thing that comes to the fore is as you scale is energy management. When Go Ahead plugs in 100 buses at a depot, the lights around that area all dim. The access to high voltage connections is more complicated and more expensive than companies might understand at the beginning of their journey. The ability to manage that energy to load balance to ensure that every vehicle has what it requires to run the route that they need to run, and to ensure that you don't breach the available energy or the energy available to you, which causes all sorts of problems if you do that to the grid. Eventually, 3 strikes and you're out. We ensure that our customers are protected and that their fleets have the right amount of energy. The next step that we see as they go on the journey is they may or may not have assets. They might have, their buses out all day. They may wish to monetize the assets that they have in their fleet. And finally, we are looking at energy optimization. So working with our partners to ensure that the energy that they use to charge their fleet is extracted at the right time, at the right price, such that it's in balance with the grid and aligns with what they have to achieve in terms of their having ensuring that their fleet is charged, as I said, and is able to leave the depot at the right time with the right amount of charge to fulfill its what it needs to do in terms of its mission that day. So our ability to address new business challenges as they emerge through a combination of software and service on top of that resilient infrastructure, bringing it all together, and often that requires us to do specific integrations. For example, with the route management or telematics, such that the operator has a single pane of glass and understands what's going on within its environment. But it's our ability to continue to address those business challenges as they come along through the creation of this platform architecture, which frankly is something I'm super familiar with from the telco world where I previously worked, is I think a major part of the requirement in a business critical fleet's journey towards electrification. And I think it's a game changer in this space. We don't see anyone else doing this.
One of our customers has a bus depot, and it's next door to a rugby pitch. And so on a Thursday night when the rugby match is on, then the buses can't charge. So therefore, what we've had to do is we've implemented sort of scheduled charging, dynamic load management, so that we can ensure that the buses are charged earlier in the week. On the Thursdays, they don't charge, or they only charge 1 or 2, and then moving on the Friday, they charge again. So we've got this sort of dynamic scheduling, dynamic load management, all to ensure that their buses still go out on time on the Friday morning. Ashish, was there anything you wanted to add on to that?
I think listening to both of the Richards there, I think my observation would probably be that a lot of what you said around telematics, a lot of what you said around grid management, energy optimization, there's some element of data and analytics built into it, is what my kind of belief is. And I think I'm really excited about the power of data and how, as an energy person by background, the power of data and bringing the whole piece around energy optimization, energy flexibility, and then eventually kind of allowing those assets to participate into the wider energy market is something I would say, as kind of borrow Richard's word, it's somewhat of a game changer. It not only allows you to kind of reduce your operational expense, but also allows you to eventually create new revenue stream opportunities, which is something that you probably wouldn't expect to see in a diesel or a petrol counterpart owned fleet. So I would say, as an energy person, my background, the coming soon part of EO charging really excites me, and I think the whole aspect around using data for be it predictive load management, predictive diagnostics is again, I think, just an operational efficiency game changer, and I think that's something. Yeah, it's the power of a robust digital platform coming into action.
I'm conscious that time is racing on now, so I think it's time to bring in Rob from the co-op. Rob, could you share how charge assurance aligns with the co-op's EV strategy and the impact it has had on your operations?
Absolutely, I can, John. Yes, no, thank you. So I've tried to kind of bring this to life in one slide, really, just to give you an idea of what we've done. So the section on the left is designed exactly that, to be a circle. It's designed to show that you need everything in that for all parts of charge assurance, and therefore the ongoing service provision to be there. So You need the sustainability bit. We need the reliability bit. We need the innovation bit in terms of what is the next step. And we also need to think about fit for the future. In terms of, Richard was talking earlier on around funding and the way that these schemes are funded, green credentials and pulling customers in as a result of sustainability that we've already looked at today is absolutely key for us. And customers seeing that we do something different, and probably more importantly, understanding customers, understanding what these charge points mean for us. We use a lot of chargers within funeral care for our fleet. So our limos and our hearses that deliver the funerals for our loved ones and families are electric for a reason, and it's all of these boxes on here. But as I said before, we're a member-owned business whereby our members tell us that these things are important to us, and needing to work with a supplier that we do in EO that has got similar ethics to our own in terms of making sure that we're always thinking about the future, because that's absolutely where we need to be. But they can also meet the requirements for our diverse estate. We've got an estate where, for any of you that shop in Co-op, our estate is very diverse. We don't have two Co-ops the same. They don't come out of a box. We're a very, very unique proposition business in that point of view. And EO have been there to support in that journey. But also that true 24/7, 365 vision, particularly in funeral care. I've completed some visits with my account manager, Emma, who works for EO, a few weeks back, just to try and unpack what the journey looks like from an EV perspective, and actually understanding the criticality of these assets from a supply chain point of view is the most important thing. But we work in a world where 24/7, 365 is absolutely expected and is standard. And as is also the kind of the end bit for us in terms of the charge assurance piece, being able to complete maintenance and monitoring online, using software, using technically skilled colleagues that understand the charge points is absolutely vital. And a couple of considerations for us in terms, we've got agnostic hardware, managed uptime. For me, that's vital in terms of a fleet journey, is making sure that that product is always available. You imagine turning up at the end of the day and not being able to charge a vehicle. It sounds basic, but actually understanding the underpinnings of that and being able to adapt to it is really key. End-to-end solution for us was important. So from being able to install the chargers, from being able to maintain them, from being able to monitor them, and ultimately upgrade them as legislation moves on, that Richard was talking around earlier on. Having a supply chain partner alongside us has been really key, that can keep us up to date with these, keep us compliant with regulatory changes, but also understanding that these things have got cost to them as well. There's always a cost to these things, and actually understanding how that's managed. I guess finally, what's the requirements of the charger? So it might be our funeral care fleet that will need to be delivered. It has to work. There's no option to not deliver a funeral because there's not a petrol alternative vehicle. And actually, it might be that it's fleet use. It might be for customer home delivery charging. It's understanding what's needed and then being able to spec to that. So for me, the overall charge assurance journey is really, really key. It's ongoing. It's something that we work with and we're supported by EO with every day. But it's really key to be able to then deliver that as part of our customer model. Thanks very much for that, Rob.
We really appreciate hearing actual examples of how cost savings and efficiency improvements can be made. And those are some impressive numbers that you've discussed there. Now, one for Richard Staveley from EO. Could you walk us through the framework itself? How does each component contribute to fleet efficiency?
I won't spend long on this, but for EO, charge assurance is about delivering business continuity, right? So ensuring every vehicle leaves the depot, as I said earlier on, with enough charge to meet its duty cycle. It's table stakes. So without walking through this, what I'll just explain is what sets us apart is the integrated approach that we've taken to delivering this. So we're at the stage of this technical transformation where the industry is dominated by point solutions. I need to buy some chargers. I need to buy some software. I'm going to chop things up and have a procurement approach to this. I need some support. And look, we frequently see tenders being released where all these bits are separate. So that reflects the journey that the industry is on. But actually, I don't think it helps drive the right business outcomes. You have to think about how you pull all these things together from the very outset. So that is what our charge assurance framework is. And moreover, we're so confident in our ability to do this that if customers wish to consume it or buy it, everything as a service, where even we own the infrastructure, we own the chargers. We make sure everything just works and they pay us monthly recurring fee. Then we're so confident in being able to hit the SLAs because we have this complete platform approach that offers charge assurance that we can transact that way. Really, what does it mean? Well, we've built software to help you visualize your network and zoom in on your depot. You see the issues in real time, and you can track them as they arise. We deliver software that you cannot see. This monitors the charging equipment, the heartbeat, real-time status, but it's also self-healing. We automatically and remotely fix about half of all the problems. So we probably don't do a good enough job in explaining to some of our customers, these are all the issues that you saw, that you had, but you never saw because we just fixed them. We expect to extend this all through AI, where we have more and more of the data that Ashish referred to. In fact, we've got about 50 million sort of charging sessions already in our data lake, but we expect to be able to apply AI to that and therefore become a lot more predictive, a lot more proactive, and come to our customers and say, well, you should be changing the way you do things because, and here's the evidence. So, and finally, backing everything up with real people 24/7 who can be on the ground speaking the right language in the right country. That's super important. We've got a footprint across Europe. We've got more than 100 depots that we have chargers under management with Amazon, for example, just to call out one name because they're one of the customers that is moving to real scale. So the notion of having each one of these individually, a point solution, whether it's procured that way or not, for us is a bit of an anathema. We think these elements just don't work separately, and therefore that's why we have pulled together this approach. I was recently in California listening to the North American E-Transit Bus Association, APTA, present. Several of the bus operators who are ahead of the game there stood up on stage and said, what I really need is a partner that does the following things. And I think by the end of the session, the end of the 2 days, they were actually talking about assurance. And for me, that was a brilliant thing to hear. We believe in this approach, and certainly we're getting great feedback from our partners and customers.
Thanks, Richard. EO Charging's impressive client portfolio extends far beyond the car, as we've heard to an extent already, showcasing a range of partnerships with forward-thinking organisations. These collaborations highlight EO's ability to deliver tailored EV charging solutions that meet the diverse needs of its customers. Can you highlight any improvements you've seen from any of our impressive list of customers, either of the Richards for this, quickly before we move on to our Q&A session?
So I'll just very quickly talk about a couple of customers, very different customers. So highlighting Amazon and Go Ahead. Now, both of these had very aggressive plans for their rollouts, and they're very different. Amazon's predominantly AC overnight, Go Ahead, high-power DC charging for buses. And so we've had to work hand in hand with them as they roll it out. And we've also had to inherit a number of issues as well from existing installs. So we're able to work with those customers, resolve those issues, build them onto our platform, and then give them the data that they need to make about business critical decisions.
Thanks, Richard. So we're on to our Q&A session now. I think it's probably time to bring Hazel in, who's hopefully got some questions that we've picked up.
We have got a question in now, and this is from Paul Wilkes. How should you balance the provision of additional spare chargers to cover downtime or faults against tech support SLAs to ensure someone is on site rapidly to fix any faults that can't be done remotely? And I will aim that at Richard Earl. I think you can.
Yeah, so great question, Paul. So we have this exact scenario with a number of our customers. So the way we manage this is we have an SLA agreement with that customer up front. And as part of that SLA agreement, we have the requirement that we need to have stock on site or with the local contracting firms. So we will have a number of spare parts. We know that facility, we know the type of chargers, and then we know that those contractors have access to those chargers. So if the automated software or the 24/7 support team can't resolve the issue, they'll raise it as a ticket, they'll contact that on-site engineers, they'll get them on site, they will resolve the issue. Now, it may be that it's just a case of power cycling the charger, it may be a case of replacing a component, or it might be replacing the whole unit. And in that case, they can work through that and then get the charger back up and running on the system. And that's all part of the SLA. But yeah, having spare parts and components on site is really important.
Thanks for that, Richard. Got one here now for Rob. What specific challenges did the co-op face before implementing charge assurance, and how has it addressed those issues?
Yeah, no, thank you. Good. Yeah, another good question. For me, and certainly the co-op, it was finding a supplier that fits the individual business or the project needs and the scope. We chose EO due to their ambitions in the market, and I think both Richard Staveley and Richard Earle have talked through that great detail, and really shows kind of what EO are trying to do in the market, but also the track record and their ability, as I spoke around earlier, kind of that end-to-end approach where we need someone that can do the whole piece for us. We are not the SMEs in the market, but absolutely EO have been that to us. And there's also a budget element. With every project, the budget has to be set and has to be delivered to the scope. And we've addressed these issues by being really open with EO and what we need from them in terms of support, and then the changes where they've been needed. And it's great that EO have supported us with some of those changes coming from a client point of view. They could easily be dismissed. There's things that we've suggested that EO have supported us and worked on. It would be very easy for them to be dismissed. But having a partner that's truly willing to support us has been fantastic.
Thanks, Rob. I think Hazel may have something else for us too.
Great. So this one is from Jess. How do we encourage public sector businesses to invest in EV infrastructure or fleets?
I think we can help them by sharing what we have learned from some of the pioneers. So in the public sector. So for example, what's going on in London, there will be many regional operators of buses that have different challenges. They're not in the city, they might have longer routes. They will be concerned about all of the sorts of things that are going on in the newspapers right now. For example, fire safety. So you're talking to a broader audience, which would include the local fire services about, okay, well, what can we do more? What have we learned from the London operators about how these buses get stabled, where we can put in alarming, what we can extract from the vehicle in terms of its condition, even when it's charging, when some of those systems go to sleep. So I think there's a lot we can do in terms of case study around education. I do believe it's the onus is on the entire industry to encourage central government, the new Labour government that's come in, and help educate them and put forward our case. And there's some great, UK bodies that are already doing that, but support them further to really, I think, impress upon them the importance of legislation, subsidy and education, particularly for the public sector. I think the private sector will move at its own pace, and is already moving quickly, but there we will be able to help other private sector companies through sharing where we can the case studies of the likes of Co-op or whoever else, Amazon, DHL, who have tackled a lot of these problems over the last 4 years.
And just to add a few more insights, and I think, Richard, that was super helpful. I think given public sector organizations also have a duty of care, and there's things around fleets are not just kind of for operational purposes. They also have a bigger impact on the environment. They have a bigger impact on public health. They have a bigger impact on air quality in the particular areas that they operate. And I think one of the things that we have often discussed with public sector is move away from this notion of purely finance-based TCO, because there are cases where operating an electric fleet, maybe an electric bus, electric truck fleet, or electric specialist vehicle fleet makes more sense, considering a lot more parameters such as air quality, public perception, impetus to private sector to kind of adopt such similar electric fleets. And I think that's what we can probably do is to, one, as you rightly said, educate the public sector to a greater level through the case studies and the wonderful work the ecosystem is already involved in. But I think from an advisory perspective, what we usually discuss with our public sector kind of colleagues and contacts is how do we take that notion of TCO forward to something that's TCO plus, that includes public service, that includes the concept of supporting the wider benefit of society.
And I think the only thing I was going to add was the fact that we can engage with legislators and those defining policy we've got we have a duty as one of the pioneers to say, to show the good stories, show the successes and the benefits, and sell that to the legislators, so that can then feed into policy decisions around encouraging the public sector transit to migrate to EVs.
Yeah, get us involved in the transformation discussion as quickly as possible, and we would be really happy to share what we have learned. Thanks, gents. I mean, we could go on for some time. I think the questions are still coming in, but we are conscious that we've run out of time. So I'd just like to say thanks to everyone for all the great questions we've had come in today. It's been insightful to learn more about charge assurance and how it's transforming fleet operations. EO Charging will share the webinar slides, their latest white paper on charge assurance, and the webinar video, which will be available soon. So a big thanks to the EO Charging team and to Zinteo for their expert insights, and to everyone who's joined us today. Have a great day and stay tuned for more Fleet World Group webinars in 2025.